Good morning if you're joining us from North America. Good afternoon to our friends in Africa and Europe. And good evening to our friends in Asia. Welcome. Thank you for joining us live for today's MAI webinar, Print on Demand. Is it worth it? There were 63 who registered from 24 countries. And we are glad that you have come to join us live today. This is Ramon Rocha welcoming you from MAI's headquarters in Carlos Stream, Illinois. We have both the chat and the Q&A available for you to interact with our speakers. Please use the chat for your comments and your questions put them on Q&A. Okay, chat box for your comments, and your questions, put them at the Q&A box. We'll give around 15 to 20 minutes to answer your questions towards the end of the presentations. So our topic today is print on demand, is it worth it? According to Publishers Weekly, dated January 7, 2021, print book sales in North America rose by 8.2% in 2020. That's 751 million units sold in last year versus 694 million units in 2019. And that's interesting because it happened during the pandemic. I don't have the figures in the developing world, but I think we can safely say, as of today, the printed book remains the preferred mode of content consumption worldwide. Digital books, audio, and ebooks are growing, which is good, but print is still ahead, and print will still be relevant in the years to come, maybe until the second coming. But managing print book inventory is a major challenge for all publishers, especially in the developing world. The temptation to always be looking at the lower unit cost for larger print runs is strong. And we end up with a huge pile of slow-moving books. Edward England would call this a literary cemetery. So here comes print on demand. Thank God for this technology. I think publishers in the majority world should first look for a POD printer in their area rather than put up their own POD system. That's just my personal opinion, just for publishers to be looking for available POD in their area before putting up their own. What if it's not available in your country? Should publishers in the majority world invest in POD? Is it worth it? Today, we are blessed to have 3 publishing operations representing 3 continents in our panel today. We have Andrei Kravchenko, the director of both Esdras Publishing and DigiBooks, headquarters in Ukraine. Please greet everyone. Andrei?
Hello.
Yes. And we have Joyce May Tongson Manalang, the finance director of OMF Literature, one of the largest, if not the largest, Christian publishing house in the Philippines. Joyce?
Hello, good evening.
Then we have Patrick and Muthoni Mercy Omukango, the husband and wife team, the prime leaders of CLC Kenya, a thriving Christian publishing, book selling, and also a POD printer in Kenya. I think Patrick would join us a bit shortly, so they're supposed to be making the presentation first, but we'll wait for Patrick to join Muthoni. So today we'll ask Joyce to please be the one to start your presentation.
Okay, it's a pleasure to present first. Let me share my screen now. Good evening to everyone. Good morning and good afternoon to the rest of the world. Good evening from the Philippines. So, it's a pleasure to share with you our take on whether print on demand is worth it. I'll take you through our journey and share with you. Let me just play this. Our journey with POD. So, as many of you are in the same situation, maybe it started with this. Uh, This is not our warehouse, but maybe a common situation we are in, as what Kuya Mon already mentioned, the literary cemetery. So, our board then decided to acquire um, the print on demand system. So we had several iterations of our POD setup. So first was a mid-range setup, and then we went to a lower range setup, and I can say we then ventured into an upper range setup, which we currently have. So the mid-range setup was supplied to us by an overseas supplier, and um, in this setup, we were able to recover our investment, not much on the revenue side, but the savings on production cost was really a huge there was really a huge financial savings on this. However, there was a time that the consumables were not easily accessible for us, so and our printers had to be replaced then, but we could not replace them anymore. So we had to go to a lower range setup. This one, we just bought off the shelf printers, but the cutters and the laminators were still from our previous setup. Here, however, although it supported our inventory management needs, we had several opportunity losses because we had customers already from our previous setup that we could no longer serve with this current setup. And even our own, we realized eventually that it could not really support our own production needs. So in July 2019, the board has approved the purchase of industrial grade printers, those with really high capacity, and these are fast printers. Although it entailed a significant capital investment, it gave us the confidence to serve both the needs of our customers and also our needs. So this is how our current setup looks like. We allocated a room for it, and we have one team lead, one specialist who is in the picture, and we also have 1 to 3 alternates. We trained some of our staff who are already performing other functions who can help and assist from time to time. And this team closely work with our artists. So our journey with POD is not without challenges. And the very first challenge I think that we had to face was finding the best suited printers for our needs. I'm not saying the best printers because there are really the best printers, but just the best suited printers for what we needed at the time and also what would fit in our budget. Our very main consideration when looking for the printers that we needed was, number one, we could not sacrifice the covers. Um, a POD printed book should not significantly differ from an offset printed book so that customers will not see the difference. So we really decided to invest in a quality and high grade cover printer. We sacrifice a bit on the inside pages since this is just black ink and just text, so mainly text. So these were our main considerations really when we were looking for our printers. Next is this was one hiccup that we had, no? Compatibility of our laminator and or our existing laminator and the printer ink. So after purchasing the printer ink, we did not know about this, but the laminator, the laminate kept on peeling off. So we had some back jobs, and it was a bit costly. This was a costly hiccup for us, but eventually our printer was able to recommend a company that really whose expertise was really on laminating machines. So we tested the laminator against our ink because the ink that we bought, the ink of the printer that we bought was had oil in it. So our previous laminator would not adhere to the ink. So this was one thing that maybe you might need to consider later on. Next is also the limitations of our POD setup. First, OMF has a wide array of book selections. We print full color children's books, and we also have our regular inspirational books and some thin books and thick books. So we've already resigned to the fact that we could not really cost efficiently print full color children's books because the unit cost will really be very expensive. So also the binding, since we only have a perfect binder, so there's a limit to the thickness of the book that we can produce through POD. Also the special effects, if we want to have textured lamination, perforations, and other effects on our covers, then we would have to forego those or maybe outsource them to other suppliers. And also, of course, the paper, because there are certain printers that can accommodate only a certain thickness of paper. And lastly, because of this is an inherent challenge of our business registration. We are registered as a non-stock, non-profit Christian organization in the Philippines. So we could not really aggressively market our POD services. You see, if you have printers and really good printers, printing business is, I can say, can be a very lucrative business if you are a profit organization, because you're not just limited to printing books, because you can just print um, anything. So this is a limitation in aggressively marketing our POD service. There are opportunities as well, mainly in our marketing. Um, we can perform market tests for front list titles. So if we are not sure if there's a new book that we want to produce and we don't have history on the author or the title of the book, then we can do a short run and see how the market responds to the book, and then decide whether we can offset it eventually. So next, also an opportunity is to sample an excerpt of the book. So we can print now a few chapters of the book and send it to reviewers or influencers who can do a review on the book. And of course, we saved on marketing collaterals. We can now print in-house our posters, our vouchers, our coupons, our bag stuffers. So these are some of the savings that we had marketing wise. Well, of course, obviously, it helped us manage our inventory. Imagine if you're a 60-year-old company like us, then you have a wide resource asset of backlist, so which can now be readily available through POD. Also, it allowed us to do smaller runs and accommodate more titles, especially when we do our publishing list. So if we have a limited publications budget, we can now spread it over to more titles and do shorter runs. And also, of course, we prevent out of stock in between reprints. Say we really do offset printing, but there's a time we were not able to calculate, for example, the lead time for the next reprint, then POD can help us manage our inventory and not become out of stock. And of course, the multiple revenue streams, as I've mentioned earlier, there's really a wide array of printing opportunities when you have the POD setup. You can service the needs of churches and seminaries who only have shorter runs. There are really a lot of companies still in the country who are not really aware that POD exists. So they always think that their runs will require their printers will always require huge quantities. So they get surprised that we can offer them the service that we can do a short run for them. And of course, do B2B or business to business POD services. So if there are smaller publishers who could not afford to have their own setup, then that is also a business opportunity for the company. So these are also other added considerations and success factors that we learned throughout our journey. First, very big factor is our supplier and the supplies and the support that they give. We've learned that for our context, it was best for us to procure from a local supplier because for one, supplies will just be readily available. So you wouldn't have to spend also on or stocking up on your POD supplies or the ink and toners. So your money will not get tied up in supplies as well. Also, the after sales support is very important. Our provider, there was a time when we had a downtime in our machines. They would allow us to print from their own facility. Of course, they charge us for the ink, but at least they want to ensure that if the machine would break down, then they have the adequate support for us. And of course, it also changed some of our strategies in terms of production and releases. So we have now what we call POD first, POD ready, and POD pricing. POD first is when we, as I mentioned earlier, when we test a product or we test a front list, then we would maybe we would do POD print first and see if there's demand, and that's when we do offset print. POD ready means we have to make sure that our list, as much as possible, except of course for our children's books, they have to be POD ready, meaning if there are specs that are for offset only, we try to avoid them. So that, for example, if we have a product and then it was printed first through offset printing, if it will warrant another reprint but no longer through offset, then the file must be ready, or the book, how the book looks, must be able, we must be able to print it through POD. And lastly is the POD pricing. So before, when we priced a product, we impute the unit cost of the offset unit cost. The POD unit cost can be a little bit pricier than the offset cost. So what we do also a P&L using the POD price, and we just make sure that our price will be adequate to cover the POD cost. Why? If later on a product, we will have to do a reprint of a product through POD, then we are sure that the price covers the POD cost. This way, we will not have to drastically change the price, especially for our trade partners. They do not want significant changes in our pricing. So, so basically, what's my 2 cents? Is it really worth it? Maybe my answer there will be, it depends on how you define what recovery means. So if your recovery is just based on the net income or the revenues that you will get from the POD, then ROI can be very long. But we consider recovery, but we also consider the savings, the savings in production cost. Then I can say that investing in POD is worth it. So yeah, that ends my presentation.
Thank you so much, Joyce. There's a quick question from Craig Featherstone. In what languages do you publish in?
We print in mainly English and Filipino or Tagalog, which is our national language. Yeah, that's our main language.
Thank you very much. Very good presentation. So, from your end, from your experience, it is worth it to invest
Yes. Yes.
in POD. Okay, Musoni, Mercy, is Patrick around? Can you show your video, please? Your camera?
I think you have to start.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, that's all right. He's not yet here, but I think maybe I can do a PowerPoint.
Okay.
Okay. He's here. Right. Allow me to share my screen.
Okay. Have you clicked on screen share?
Mm, That's what I'm doing.
CLC is an international.
You don't see it yet.
Just found it.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll share our video.
CLC is an international mission organization. Its origins date back to the establishment of a Christian bookshop in Colchester, England in 1941. To date, it has its international headquarters in England. Our mission statement of purpose is to make Christian literature available to all nations so that people may come to faith and maturity in the Lord Jesus Christ. CLC Kenya, started in 2007, achieves its mandate through partnerships with international ministries with content relevant for the East Africa community and Africa at large. It also partners with the local churches and ministries to be able to spread the Word of God through channels relevant to the specific organizations. Our ministries are divided into three main categories: literature programs, publishing, and missions and outreach. Literature programs is made up of Bibles and book distribution, book programs, the iGen Teens programs, and the family reading picnics. Publishing is made up of traditional publishing, self-publishing, print on demand, and writing classes. Missions and outreach is made up of pastors' empowerment, marketplace ministries, and the author's collaboration. Our POD journey began back in 2013. We were going through a financial challenge. Due to the taxation of books by the government, prices went higher, and we had many slow-moving titles in huge quantities shipped over a long period of time. This affected cash flow to import needed titles. We were looking for a way to get good titles on demand without importation to save on shipping and custom charges, time, capital investment, and warehousing and inventory management expenses. We saw POD as a new revenue stream to keep our ministry doors open. What is print on demand? Our POD facility is a miniaturized bookmaking system consisting of a computer system, cover printers, text printers, laminating machines, perfect binders, scoring boards, cutters, and consumables such as printing paper, cover stock, text printer ink or toner, cover printer ink or toner, laminating film, hot melt glue, cutting sticks, and more. The system is ideally a compressed printing press, but with advantages of mobility, low cost, quick production time, and the ability to print as many or few copies as you need. The benefits of POD to authors and publishers. POD offers low capital investment in printing quality books. It promises quick production time at competitive pricing, the ability to print as many or few copies as you need, or reprint as and when required, with minimal to no warehousing cost involved. And it's inexpensive, especially for black and white text-only books. Authors have the opportunity to keep improving their titles and print more refined copies. And with continued improvement in technology, quality is becoming better and acceptable for more uses. The disadvantages of POD. Compared to offset printing, where large quantities are printed cost-effectively, POD's unit cost is much higher. Offset printing provides a large variety of paper types with custom finishes, which compared to Kenya, POD's paper choice is very limited. Offset printing provides for special custom inks, such as metallic and Pantone colors, while POD is limited to black and white and costs are significantly higher if a book is full color. Print quality is developing over time as technology advances to ensure color fidelity. In April of 2015, through a grant via CLC USA, we received a semi-automatic system and set up in Nairobi, Kenya. We also received training. This was important because part of the process was labor-intensive and required attention to details to acquire desired quality. Our first clients. April to July of 2015, we were practicing with our internal orders for 4 months. This helped us understand the system and get the processes right. In September of 2015, we got our first big order that put our training, the system, and the consumables to the test. We had moved from 20 to 30 copies to 1,200 copies. This opened our eyes to some weaknesses in our system. Big orders deplete consumables quickly, and the desktop ink printers had a lifespan, so printers quickly moved from being classified as assets to consumables. In 2015, we served 13 authors and printed 22 titles. We did a business plan, what we hoped the system would enable us to achieve in line with our mandate at CLC Kenya. In 2016, as word got out about the system, we received good reception as it was a needed answer to prayers for authors and their book projects. We started marketing and attending events. With orders from local authors, our POD facility became a revenue stream. However, we also started to experience equipment breakdown. We started to notice a demand for support services such as editing, cover design, layout, ISBN, and copyright services, though we did not do much about it. In 2016, we served 33 authors and printed 144 titles. In 2017, the demand pushed for an increase in staffing, and getting consumables locally became a critical need for sustainability. We started to offer author support services, and therein our publishing house was born in January 2017. We facilitated full self-publishing for 4 authors and launched them. In June of 2017, we started to follow MAI monthly training forums, which were instrumental in advancing our new venture. In 2017, we served 68 authors and printed 219 titles. In 2018, we acquired rights for more international publishers via Market Square in Budapest. We got more training and an emphasis on editorial excellence from Africa Speaks in Chicago. We also got more printing and publishing partnerships with international ministries who had a focus to minister to East Africa with books. Previously, they would have to ship their books to Africa, but with POD, we could print and deliver them when and where they needed them. From the interactions with the authors we were serving, we started the Authors Collaboration, a platform to train and network East African authors. The text printer model we were used to was phased out, and it took us several months to settle on a reliable replacement. This significantly affected our workflow. In 2018, we served 118 authors and printed 224 titles. In 2019, we settled on new printer solutions, and our work was revived. We developed our website, www.kenyaclc.org, which freed the time we would spend explaining to new clients and also sending quotes. We did 6 authors training every other month to empower potential authors. This further strengthened the POD workflow because self-publishing was gaining acceptance. We started book programs from the books we were printing in POD. With Abraham Park's Genesis Genealogies book, we did a pastors' conference with 300 delegates. With Julius Mwebia's Conceive Achieve, we did a program in partnership with a local university for over 200 youths. The program is getting to its 3rd year. In 2020, the programs birthed and supported by POD continued. The pandemic slowed down our POD operations, but because publishing and writing classes went up at that time, POD resumed after a few months. With Donna Pato's This Isn't the Life I Signed Up For, a partner did a 6-week forum for about 100 women. Larry Myanmar got 1,000 copies of the Gospel of John for his discipleship program in Kenya. 100+ single parents were trained through the book program, Back on My Feet by Muthoni Mercy Omuhango. 15 teenagers empowered through the 16-week Conceive Achieve for Teens program by Adna McKenna. Our POD ministry milestones. Over 200 authors were served in the last 6 years. over 72,000 copies printed in the last 6 years, over 10 international ministries served to reach 8 African countries: Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, South Sudan, Rwanda, Burundi, and Botswana, from the UK, USA, South Korea, and Australia. Over 15 Kenyan ministries served through POD, over 50 international books printed and distributed in East Africa from Baker Publishing House, SIL, Goodwill Rights Management, and CLC USA. In summary, CLC Kenya's POD birthed the publishing house facilitating self-publishing for 30-plus authors every year, the authors' collaboration that trains and networks 60-plus authors, writing classes with 30-plus writers trained, support of 6-plus book programs, the birth of the African Christian Authors Book Award in 2020 to recognize and promote Christian authorship in East Africa. These have been a ministry avenue as well as revenue streams that have enabled us to keep our ministry doors open. The negative impact of POD. Coupled with the increase in self-publishing, there is a concerning rise of low-quality books, that is, low editorial excellence and poorly designed or laid out books, a lack of quality control check systems, and low book sales, with most authors printing, selling, and distributing less than 200 books per annum. The lessons we've learned. Procure equipment and consumables that are readily available in your market to save on time and support or servicing. Regularly maintain and service your equipment. Take care of your equipment and your equipment will take care of you. If possible, have your staff learn to do repairs. It will take time for them to learn, so be patient. Depending on the country you are in, consider that you might not get a technician to do repairs. In our case, it is difficult to get technicians for automatic binders. Keep up with technological trends and adapt as quickly as change happens. Research and development is a key element. POD is a supplementary service and not a standalone. If you can, have value addition services like editing, design, marketing, and distribution. Manual aspect of POD needs time to master, for example, binding and cutting. Have staff who are attentive to details and are tech savvy. Keep your eyes on the quantities of your consumables. They can stall your POD facility, especially if importation is required. Having a business plan helped us measure our growth and development. It took us 3 years to get a return on the investment. Allow for your POD systems to grow and birth other ministries and revenue streams. Consider getting quality second-hand equipment to save on capital investment. For our facility, we promise good quality, but we also let the customer know that we may not offer high-end quality. Be honest with your timelines. They may vary with the workload. The promise for quick turnaround time that POD offers may change with increasing workload. Know and be honest about your capacity. It's okay to refer to offset printing. Our future plans. We are trusting God for a high-end perfect binding machine with side gluing features and a high-end guillotine. We also hope for increased orders in 2021 to cover the deficits created by the pandemic in 2020.
That's it. That's it from us, Ramon. Our journey.
That's an excellent presentation, Musani, Mercy, and Patrick. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Yeah, those are very good lessons that you've learned in your journey. Thank you for sharing them.
Thank you.
I think we have. Well, we'll ask the question on the cost later. Um, okay, Tessa Chansa was asking, can you give me also an idea on the maximum number of copies that can be printed using your POD system? What's the maximum number of copies that you can print?
Oh, I think the most we've done about 2,000 copies
Wow.
for a client.
It's almost an offset quantity, right?
Yes.
It's
But at the time,
one title for 2,000?
yes. The client insisted. He preferred our quality over the offset, so he insisted that he was to do it for him. Yeah.
Wow. Well, congratulations, said Gerardo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And then the last to present is Andrei in Ukraine. Andrei, can you show your video, your camera?
Just a second. I cannot start because you muted
Oh,
me.
sorry, sorry. Okay.
Okay. Our journey with POD started in 2014. Oh, sorry, 2012. When we met, when I met with Joseph Gosen, who is an American missionary, we were looking for a solution for our needs. As Ramon said, I'm a director of a publishing house, and at that time we decided to found a new company solely for the POD operations, and it's called Digibooks Press. And from the point of view as a publishing house director, I was looking for a solution when low moving inventory would overflow our it was a problem for us when we couldn't sell the print runs printed with offset. So we were looking for smaller quantities and low investments for our books, for our back for our titles that are out of print, and it was nice to meet with Joseph. He has an extensive experience in printing for over 40 years, and my experience is more than 20 years. So we decided to put together a POD system, the higher end system with industrial scale printers and all other equipment that's usually used for offset printing for producing books in a traditional way. So I will share a short video about our company, which will answer most of the questions about how we operate.
Ever since the invention of the printing press, it was essential to print thousands of books per order for printing houses to run a successful business. This created a huge hurdle for small publishers who often did not have the means to purchase such large orders, and would consequently have difficulty keeping all their books in print. Due to the nature of printing, there appeared to be no alternative to bulk orders. That is, until now. Print-on-demand technology has revolutionized printing by enabling cost-efficient book printing. Publishers can now be much more precise in the number of books needed, putting in orders as small as a single book and not printing books until they are actually needed. This not only reduces the need for storage and large upfront printing costs, but also financially enables publishers to print a wide variety of different literature. Printing a book is now as easy as uploading a file to the DigiBooks website and receiving a high-quality book on your doorstep. Based in Alexandria, in central Ukraine, DigiBooks Press was created to bring this print-on-demand service to Ukraine and other republics of the former Soviet Union. We launched in April of 2016. So what happens behind the scenes at DigiBooks? The first step is for publishers and authors to log on to their personal account on our custom-built website, where they can upload and manage their entire catalog of books, making it extremely simple to place orders as needed. Once they have uploaded the book files, they are able to customize their order by choosing specifications such as binding type, size of book, and paper type. Our team at DigiBooks verifies the files, and if no changes are required, the customer can then make an order specifying the number of copies needed. The notification goes through to the production team, who sends the files on to the color and black and white printers. The color printer prints the book cover, which is then laminated to achieve a glossy or matte finish. Meanwhile, the pages of the book are being printed by the black and white printer. Once all the pages have been printed, they are cut, and if they are paperback, they are glue-bound into the cover. If the books are hardcover, a cover is glued on separately. The book blocks are bound with reinforcement mall. The end ribbons are glued on, and the blocks are then glued and inserted into the covers. Finally, the books are pressed and packaged and ready for shipping. Thanks to DigiBooks and Print on Demand, we are now able to efficiently and inexpensively make books more accessible.
So what happened before we started the operation? We decided to buy second-hand. We decided to buy second-hand used equipment from Europe to lower our investments. And because we already had some experience with the printing machines, so we believed that we could fix any issues if any arise. And it took us around 2 years to find right equipment for our setup. It was high-end black and white printer, which can print up to 250 pages per minute, per hour. And another color printer is for the covers, which is not so productive, but we just don't need more productivity from that color printer. All other equipment like laminator and cutter and binder was bought from Europe too, and it's German or Belgian equipment which proved that it can serve us for years or even for the tens, for decades. At the same time, we were putting together a custom-made site for our customers to upload their files and then to order the books. And as you saw, all the processes from uploading the files, from registration up to ordering the books is made online. So we serve our customers from different parts of Ukraine and from abroad sometimes even never seen them. What
It's
what
interesting.
are the yeah?
It's
Okay.
interesting that you have your online ordering system that people can log on to your website. Is it website?
Yeah,
And
yes, you can register and then we apply, we have some user groups. We have special discounts for the Christian publishers. Mostly, we aim to serve the professional publishers who can prepare the files uh, for the inside block, for the covers, and we just check the file. If any issues found, they just fix them, and then another group of publishers are uh, 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 all other customers, not Christian or ministry or Christian colleges, and they have lower discounts. So we are trying to get more revenue from them than from the Christian publishers. So the main challenges in any situation, as Joyce and Patrick and Muthoni said, it's servicing the equipment. Uh, in our case, the black and white printer can be serviced only by a Canon technician. We just can't service it. It has a special port for the engineer to plug in, and with his laptop he can go into service mode and service the printer. I guess in some parts of the world it's not an option because there are no trained engineers in such countries, and even in Ukraine there is only one such engineer to serve such a machine, and in whole Ukraine there are around 5 or 6 machines only, like ours. So we serve to the Christian colleges, the publishers, the independent authors. Another challenge is the mentality of the publishers who used to print with offset. So their mentality is printing large quantities at once, and every time they calculate the price, they think, oh, it's much, the price is much higher. But then if you calculate the investments and think from that perspective, it's not too high because all of the books you printed and that are not sold, they just sit in your warehouse and don't give you any revenue. So that's our main challenge in Ukraine, to prove the publishers that it's much more effective way to use their money printing their books with POD. As a publishing house, we print almost all our books with Digibooks Press, except 2 books we sell thousands per year. We still print these books with offset. We still have our offset operation, and as a next step, we are now moving into adding some offset operations, offset press to our POD system. So our current clients and prospective clients would benefit from printing from the small qualities up to 500 or thousands of copies with offset with us. So the system is almost ready for the operation, and we hope this year we'll buy and install a new, it's not new, but another offset press for our offset operation.
Thank you, Andre. Uh, in short, I mean, in summary, you would say, is it worth it? You have set up POD?
Sure. It was the main reason why we started Digibooks Press, because I would say I was right at that time that we needed this solution for our publishing house, and then while it was unfolding, it's beneficial for all the Ukrainian publishers and some other publishers from abroad who printed with us. Yes, for sure.
Gerardo said you're doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
It's interesting to point out, from among the three of you, the three presenters, you and Ray created a separate company to do printing, right? Digibooks Press is separate
Yes.
from Esdras
Yes.
Publishing. Unlike OMF Literature and CLC Kenya, your POD is still part of your organization, right? But in Andre's case, they decided to create a separate company, which is good. I mean, that's a model that our audience can take a look at, because you are also your growth in your cost, looking at all your costs and profit. There's two separate books, two separate operations, separate from publishing. There is a question here, like around how much is the investment for a POD system? Would you be willing to divulge your investment, Joyce? How much did you?
It would really depend on, I think the most expensive there would be the printers. Had I joined the POD seminar like this before we bought it, I think I would have taken their advice to also venture into second-hand refurbished printers, especially if you're starting. There are, especially in developing countries, we get very good quality refurbished machines from the US, from Japan. So you might want to consider that if you're from the Philippines. Um, you could have a good POD system already, I think, in the range of maybe $150,000 to $100,000. That would be a modest setup already, workable. Even lower than that, if you really good, if you get a good refurbished printer.
Yes. That gives us an idea how much the investment would be. What about you, Patrick and Muthoni? How would you be willing to share the cost that you have incurred so far as investment?
I think we started with about $30,000
US.
in 2015. But then we had an additional $18,000 in 2019, 2020.
Okay.
But also, if we had done a seminar like this, would also have gone for the refurbished, which is what we are doing. That's what we did with the $18,000, and it's done for us much more than the initial $30,000. So we are currently at $48,000 investment.
Very good. Very good. Praise the Lord for His provision for the finance to be able to do that. And Andre?
Our setup, our collection of equipment, if it would be bought new, it would be around $1 million. But since we bought it used and made some refurbishment by ourselves and so on, the whole investment was around $180,000. The website itself costed us around $7,000, and we still invest in it to make some changes, improvements every year. So that's around the number.
Okay, so at this time you're close to about 200,000 US.
Yes. It's it's for the POD system. I'm not talking about other equipment we purchased.
You're going to procure a new or second-hand offset machine, right?
Yes.
In the near
Mm-hmm.
future.
Yes.
We are happy to read this comment from Craig Featherstone. I have enormous respect for these brothers and sisters who are doing such amazing work in Africa, the Philippines, and Ukraine. Your vision, discipline, and perseverance are a wonderful model for others to advance in Christian publishing around the world. Well done. Thank you, Craig. Yes, so Jess is asking about the investment in training and equipping people to work to be the operators, the skills that are needed. So what is your experience? I think that's one of the key factors, right? You have to have some people who are able to operate the machines, do quick repairs. So what is your advice in training people? Muthoni, Patrick, what's your advice in making sure that you have the right people?
I think the first part is recruitment. Start with the right people in the first place. I think for us, what I was looking for was really somebody who can be able to operate machines, like a bit tech savvy, but still able to also do the manual part, because for us it was semi-automatic. And so somebody who, of course, can be able to do computer softwares and all that, and be able to train people. And now for us, the training was really on job.
On the
So
job.
basically, I was trained by a supplier, and so now I trained the team that came afterwards. And then one of the things we usually do is that when, let's say, we have a technician to fix something, I usually advise the team, be there with him, watch what he's doing, so that next time we don't have to call him. And so we find that at times they can fix for us something today, tomorrow I should be able to do it, unless it's very complicated. So for us, it's on-job training. Yeah.
I think it's also remarkable that you are there, Patrick. You're so passionate about POD, so that's a key factor as well. So just one person, at least one person, is it? You can
No, now
train
we have.
aside from you.
Sorry, no, now we are two. We are three
Now we have
basically.
three.
Yes.
Thank you. What about Joyce? What's your advice, people?
This the importance of having a very good supplier comes into play here, because mainly it's really the printers are really just plug and play. You can really just print and then it prints. So one of the selling proposition of our supplier was it only needs one person to operate the entire system. So it's actually pretty easy. The technical part, we leave it to our printers, our suppliers. So they come because they are just nearby. So they just come over to do any technical, and they can be reached over the phone. The support is free, unlimited. The training and support is also unlimited. So make sure you get a very good supplier who provides those extra services for you. We try to train not only one but also other people from, because there are times when the load would really be a lot and you'll require more people, but it's not like full-time people in POD. So they are just people we can pull in and do a job, and then they can do their other tasks. So we save also on manpower costs. So how many staff one main person will do, and then you can just supplement.
Thank you. Thank you. And Andre, you have quite an elaborate setup, so you have a team of
Uh,
people working
uh,
visible.
as we have one dedicated operator for the POD, and usually he runs all the machines, and it's enough. If the load raises up, uh, we, me and Joe, help him to overcome this. Then we have a manager who calls and talk and with the customers, and an accountant. And because we share some assets with our publishing house, like cars or van or building. So it's a little bit connected, but still it's separate operation. So for now it's just one operator, and in the future we think it would be two, at least two operators we will need.
Thank you. Well, your colleague Joe Guzen made his comment that in Germany the threshold between offset and POD is 2,000 copies, but in
Yes,
Ukraine it's 300, 300,
it's
500.
we would say in Ukraine, because the wages are so low, people sometimes go with offset with 300 copies, but usually it's 500 copies, and then they go with offset.
That beyond that. Mhm,
Yes.
mhm. Very good.
And the advantage of the POD and our system and our discounts is that they can the highest discount while printing 40 copies. So they don't need to print at once a few hundred copies. They can print 50 books, sell them, and come back and order more. That's how um, some our customers operate, because they lack funds, so they just print the books or magazines not at once, but dividing them into print runs over the period of time.
Thank you. Alemayehu, as well, their services are being offered in their respective countries, and I think Andre is even offering his services to other nearby neighboring countries. So they're limiting their customers to within their area.
Yes,
Um,
it's usually it's a POD is a regional service. You can serve overseas. It's not cost effective.
yes. So booklets selling well in your country. Can you publish? Okay. Belia, you may have to look for a POD printer in the US. Okay. Thank you for your question. We did respond to your biggest challenges in your presentations, right? You presented your challenges, major challenges in your POD. Okay, one thing I've noticed as far as Kenya and the Philippines is concerned is that you have opted to get your machines from local suppliers. I think that's an important, I mean, local suppliers, as far as the Philippines, they even offered you very good service from your suppliers, and also the consumables are available locally. You don't need to import them. Joyce?
That's correct. The thing with the Philippines is really a lot of printer suppliers in the country. So it might be challenging for others in the other countries here represented here. But good thing in the Philippines, there's really quite a number of suppliers.
Yes. So Team Wells is saying yes. POD is basically a regional service. Um, does that? But some of you have mentioned sending books to other countries. So does that significantly raise the unit cost? Inherently, POD price is higher than offset, right? So if you add shipping cost, it would even be higher. So I think POD will work basically in country and in the same region. Like in Europe, Andre can ship to neighboring countries.
And sometimes it's beneficial for other former Soviet republics where the authorities prohibit printing books, Christian books. So we printed some print runs for them and then shipped.
Okay.
I think also for us in Kenya, especially because we have a number of Christian ministries from the US and the UK. So when you look at the cost of printing in Kenya and shipping to a neighboring country, maybe like Tanzania or Uganda, if you compare the cost of printing in Kenya and shipping there, as opposed to shipping from the US, so it becomes profitable for the ministries abroad to just do POD and ship to our neighboring countries.
Very good. So
We
thank
uh,
the
we printed one order for Moldova. It was a book ordered from Finland, and then we shipped it to Moldova for distribution there, because there is no such a service in Moldova, so it was cost effective for them. And the shipping cost within Ukraine and the neighboring countries is not too high.
not too high. So you can serve the needs of your neighboring countries. Very good. The same with Kenya. You can serve orders to Uganda, right? As you said. Very good. Byron Williamson's comment is, I'm so impressed with your entrepreneurial spirit, not to mention God's work being played out in your ministries. Praise the Lord. Thank you, Byron, for that encouraging word. Okay, so I think we're run out of time, but we really thank all of you. Thank you, Patrick and Muthoni, for your sharing. Joyce, thank you so much, and Andre. It's a blessing to hear your testimonies, and I think it's an encouragement, a blessing to our audience. They may consider setting up their own POD system where they are. Uh, can you give us your parting words of encouragement to our audience? Let's start with Patrick and Muthoni. What are some encouraging words from you?
I think for us, I usually say POD was like an open door that God opened for us for the ministry and also for Kenya. We saw the impact in very many ministries and authors who are waiting, for this opportunity, who had stopped writing. And so POD was an open door. So I would encourage um, anybody else who is considering it, of course, considering the factors, the pros and cons and everything, But if you're able to do it, it can be such a big blessing. We've seen it open other doors, other ministry opportunities that we're actually doing currently. So yes, I would encourage people to consider POD. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Joyce?
Yes, me myself, I'm very inspired by listening to my other co-panelists. I'm really inspired by the story of our brothers from Kenya, brother and sister from Kenya, how they really have the ministry mindset in their POD setup. So it's inspiring. It's inspiring. I'm sharing with my management team how inspired I am. I'm also inspired by the story of Andre, and their setup is a wish. It's a wish list. So I'm already computing in my mind how much investment we need to reach that point. But by God's grace, we hope that in whatever setup, in whatever it may be, low range, mid range, or high range, then may we not forget the God-given ministry that the Lord has given us. So I think in all His means, and in all our endeavors, I think the Lord will bless us.
Amen. Amen. And CLC Kenya has really done a good job in developing and nurturing local writers.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your ministry. Andre, words of encouragement to our.
Yeah, I would like to thank you, Ramon, and other panelists for such a productive webinar, and I think it will be uh, beneficial for our attendees. And I would encourage to consider using POD in every publishing house's work. It's an additional stream of revenue for them, and if it makes sense, they can set up their own POD system, or just go and start with solution like our Digibook Express. So to outsource this, but still it worth it. So just go and uh,
Well, thank you for three of you, three organizations. You have shared the lessons you've learned, and I hope this will be an encouragement to our friends who are still yet to set up or considering to set up their own POD system in their respective countries. So thank you so much for the time and the preparations that you've done to be our panelists today. Thank you so much. You've blessed us with your sharing and with your words of encouragement. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in today's MAI webinar. We hope that this has been helpful to you. We have upcoming webinars. In fact, next week, February 16, is a Spanish webinar, Faith and Finances, Practical Ideas to Publish in Difficult Times, with Pastor Daniel Gonzalez and Patricia Cabral. That's next Tuesday in Spanish. That's a Spanish language webinar. And on March 9th, an English webinar with Mauricio Zagari from Brazil. The title of the webinar is How to Publish Your Pastor's Sermon Materials. So we'll be sending out invitations to everyone to join our upcoming webinars. So in the meantime, thank you for joining us today. God bless you all. Please take care. And we continue to trust the Lord for the resolution of the virus and the pandemic. And we're looking forward to coming together in person, God willing, at Lit World 2022 in Hungary. Thank you. God bless you all. Thank you for being with us.